Imagine a shadow 50 feet long, rising silently from the sunless depths of the abyss to tear through the heart of our modern oceans. What would happen to our world if the greatest nightmare of the prehistoric seas, a titan thought lost to the dust of millions of years, suddenly returned to claim a throne that has long since been occupied? This is not a ghost story, but a terrifying glimpse into a biological collision that would rewrite the rules of life on Earth. If the Megalodon were alive today, the blue frontier we think we understand would transform into a slaughterhouse, triggering a war between ancient power and modern evolution that only one side could survive. The Otodus Megalodon was more than just a large shark, it was a biological monolith, a 50-ton engine of destruction engineered by the Miocene epoch to do one thing: consume. Reaching lengths of over 60 feet, its jaws were wide enough to swallow 2 adult humans standing side by side, lined with nearly 300 serrated teeth the size of a man's hand. With a bite force of 40,000 pounds per square inch, enough to crush a small car like a soda can, it sat at the absolute pinnacle of history's food chain. This was a creature that hunted whales for sport, a predator so massive it shaped the very evolution of the mammals it pursued. Its habitat was the warm, shallow coastal shelves of a younger world, a place where life was abundant and the energy required to fuel its massive frame was easily found. But the ocean of today is a vastly different realm than the one the Megalodon left behind 3 million years ago. If this leviathan were to emerge from some hidden thermal pocket in the Mariana Trench, it would find itself in a world that is colder, more desolate, and far more competitive. The modern ocean is a desert compared to the lush, prey-rich seas of the past. The water temperatures have plummeted, and the vast, shallow inland seas that once served as the Megalodon's nurseries have long since vanished. For a colossus that requires thousands of pounds of blubber every single day just to maintain its internal temperature, the modern Atlantic and Pacific would be a frigid, unforgiving test of endurance. Our current ecosystem is a finely tuned machine, balanced on a knife's edge. The giants of today, the blue whales and the humpbacks, have spent millions of years thriving in the absence of a super predator. They migrate thousands of miles across open water, grazing on tiny krill in a peaceful cycle that keeps the ocean's carbon levels in check. Below them, the great white shark and the orca have divided the spoils of the sea, serving as the ultimate enforcers of the deep. There is no vacancy at the top of the food chain, and every calorie in the ocean is already accounted for by a complex web of scavengers, hunters, and filter feeders. In this tightly balanced world, the arrival of a megalodon would be like dropping an active volcano into a backyard pond. The pressure on the food chain would be immediate and catastrophic. To survive, the megalodon would need to target the largest sources of energy available, disrupting the migratory patterns of whales that have remained unchanged for millennia. The sheer presence of such a massive predator would send shockwaves through the mid-tier populations. Seals, dolphins, and smaller sharks would be forced into shallower, more crowded waters to avoid the titan, leading to mass die-offs and the collapse of local fisheries that humans rely on for survival. The first encounters would be nothing short of a massacre. Picture a solitary humpback whale, migrating toward its calving grounds in the warm waters of the Caribbean. It has no natural defense against a predator of this scale. The megalodon wouldn't circle or test its prey like a great white, it would strike from below with the force of a freight train, aiming for the whale's tail or fins to immobilize it instantly. In the dark, murky waters of the continental shelf, the whale would never see the attack coming. The sea would turn red for miles, attracting hundreds of smaller sharks, but they would keep their distance, sensing the primal, overwhelming power of a creature that has returned from the grave to claim its rightful tithe. Yet, as the megalodon asserts its dominance, it would begin to face its greatest biological challenge, the cold. Modern megalodons would be trapped by their own physiology. While they possessed a primitive form of warm-bloodedness, it would not be enough to allow them to hunt in the nutrient-rich, icy waters of the Arctic or Antarctic where the largest whales congregate today. They would be confined to the tropical and temperate bands of the equator, creating a dead zone where no large marine mammal would be safe. This geographic restriction would lead to a desperate struggle for territory. If the whales learned to stay in the cold, the megalodons would begin to starve, forced to turn on each other or hunt smaller, less efficient prey. As the megalodon struggles to adapt, a rising threat would emerge from the darkness. It is a common misconception that the megalodon would have no rivals. While it may be the largest, it is far from the most intelligent. In the modern ocean, there is a predator that has mastered the art of the kill through social cooperation and strategic brilliance. The orca, the so-called killer whale, would not simply roll over for an ancient intruder. These are animals that have been known to hunt great whites just to eat their livers, and they do so with the precision of a military unit. To the orca, a megalodon is not just a threat, it is the ultimate prize. The apex confrontation would eventually be inevitable. A pod of 30 orcas, led by a matriarch with decades of experience, encounters a lone, hungry megalodon. The shark is 3 times the size of any single orca, but the whales possess something the shark lacks: communication and a plan. While the megalodon relies on sheer physical force and ambush tactics, the orcas use sound to map the shark's every move. They don't attack the jaws, they attack the gills. They strike from the sides, ramming the megalodon with their massive heads, trying to flip it over or tear at its pectoral fins. The battle would be a clash of eras. The megalodon, a relic of a more violent, primitive time, crashes in the water, its massive tail creating whirlpools as it tries to catch a single whale in its crushing grip. If it lands one bite, the orca is finished. But the pod is too fast, too coordinated. They work in shifts, exhausting the giant, preventing it from surfacing for oxygen or diving deep to recover. They exploit the megalodon's need for constant movement to push oxygen through its gills. It is a fight of attrition, brute strength versus collective intelligence. In the end, the ocean's current rulers might just prove that the world has moved past the need for monsters. The reaction of the ecosystem to this ongoing war would be devastating. With the whales being hunted by both megalodons and defensive orcas, their numbers would plummet. This would lead to an explosion in the population of krill and small fish, which sounds positive, but without the whales to circulate nutrients from the deep sea to the surface, the ocean's biological pump would fail. Oxygen levels in the water would drop, and vast dead zones would begin to expand. The presence of the megalodon wouldn't just change the food chain, it would potentially suffocate the very ocean it calls home. In the final scenario, the most realistic outcome for a surviving megalodon population is not global domination, but a slow, agonizing slide toward extinction. The modern world simply isn't built for them. There isn't enough high-energy prey to sustain a large population, and the encroachment of human activity, sonar interference, plastic pollution, and overfishing would put immense pressure on a species that is already struggling to adapt to a colder climate. They would likely become rare, mythical dwellers of the deepest tropical trenches, occasionally rising to strike a ship or a stray whale, living on the fringes of a world that has evolved to survive without them. The ultimate twist in the return of the megalodon is the realization that the shark is not the true monster of this story. We often look at the prehistoric past with a sense of terror, fearing the return of the tooth and the claw. But nature is a master of balance, and it moved on from the megalodon for a reason. Evolution favored the clever over the massive, the social over the solitary. If the megalodon returned today, it wouldn't find a kingdom to rule, it would find a world that has outgrown it. The true horror isn't that a 60-foot shark might be lurking in the dark, it's that even the most powerful creature to ever live can be rendered obsolete by the slow, silent ticking of time. Nature doesn't need to fight its monsters, it simply waits for them to become irrelevant.